Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel Everything You Believe. I am Babu and I am thrilled to have you here for part 2 of Superpower China. If you missed part 1, no worries, there is a link in the description given below. Go catch up and then join us back here. But if we come back to our time of 1976, after the death of Mao, a new leader emerges, Chinese Communist Party, Deng Xiaoping. He is also called the father of modern China because it was during this time that the real transformation of China began. Things were among those who raised their voice against Mao during Mao's time. Because of this, during the Cultural Revolution, he was forced to resign from all his positions. So it was obvious that Deng Xiaoping's ideology was quite different from Mao's ideology. Deng believed that government had excessive control over the Chinese economy, which led to the destruction of China in the last 50 years. He wanted to liberate the economy, hence he introduced his policies called economic liberalization. There are many different aspects in it, which we will talk about one by one, but their overall ideology is today called socialism with Chinese characteristics. First, to bring transformation in the agricultural system, Deng introduced a household responsibility system. When Mao launched his Great Leap Foreign campaign, private farming was completely abolished. No individual was allowed to own land. When Mao launched his Great Leap Forward campaign, private farming was completely abolished. No individual was allowed to own land. All ownership was in his hands of government at the local level. Deng said this ownership should not be changed. Ownership will still remain in the hands of the village government, but we will give the land on lease to individual farmers and their families on long-term contracts. Those farmers will have the rights to decide which crops they want to grow, how to manage their business and where to earn profit. Farmers got more freedom to grow crops on their choice. Second, Deng said that all farmers will have to sell a certain amount of their crops to the government. But after meeting the quota, we can sell more than what they are producing anywhere and earn extra profit. This will motivate the farmers to innovate and their productivity will increase. Some similar land reforms after independence in India. Reforms were also brought in states like Kerala and West Bengal, which is said to be a big reason why states like Kerala have become so developed today. However, the specifics of those reforms were slightly different, so they can be discussed in some other video. But Deng Xiaoping applied the same idea to factories also. Factory manager responsibility system was introduced. Till now, during the time of Mao, the responsibility of managing the industrial factories in China was given to the people of the Communist Party. There was a lot of political interference. Deng said that this responsibility will be given to the workers and managers working in the factory. They will now have more freedom to decide what to produce, is their production target, and what price will he sell the things and how much salary will he get. Once again, factories workers were able to get an incentive to work harder. Imagine yourself, there is a fact which makes shoes, for example. Now, the workers and the managers working in the factory have the right to decide how many shoes to produce, which material should be used, and what price shoes to be sold, and how much salary should we be paid. A sense of ownership and accountability will develop among the laborers who were working. This is our factory. We can make it success if we want. There was a lot of centralized planning in Mao's time. One person sitting at the top is dictating everything, that everything should be done like this, and the government will decide everything, what is happening and what is not happening. But during the time of Deng, decentralization was seen. Give more freedom in economic sense. Due to all these policy measures, acts of people started coming out of poverty and the people's life started changing. Between 1978 and 1984, the average agricultural output in China increased at the rate of 7.4%. The green production that was taking place in China doubled between the late 1970s and the mid 1980s. The next big step was to bring revolution in education. Focus on educating people. Due to this, a compulsory education law is brought by the government in the year 1986. Free and compulsory education for 9 years for every child in China. Now, compare this with India. After how many years the Right of Education Act was brought in India in the year 2009. On top of that, the matter did not end here by bringing this law in China. The government started spending more money consistently on people's education. In the year 1980, the money the government was spending on education was approximately 2% of GDP, and gradually it kept increasing, and the year 2012 it reached 4.1% of GDP. Once again, compare it with India. According to the latest figure in India, our government has spent 2.9% on education pay on GDP. Not only this, China also focused a lot of technical and vocational education. People started being taught those skills which are actually needed in jobs. Friends, all the developed countries have focused a lot on education, and they are developed because on education has been given such huge priority. Due to all these measures, an amazing improvement was seen in the literacy rate in China. In the year 1982, it was at 65%, and in 2010 it crossed 95%. For comparison, India's total literacy rate is still at 77%. Similarly, spending money on healthcare is another such big indicator. In 2021, China spent 5.59% on its GDP on health, and India spent around 2.96% on its GDP according to the data of 2021. The next development strategy of Deng Xiaoping was township and village entrepreneurship, also known as TVES. It's a very similar to India's cooperative model in many ways. Cooperatives in India are usually owned by the workers working in the cooperatives, but TVES on the other hand are owned by township and villages. The objective of the both is the same: to bring economic growth in rural areas and increase the living standards of the people. In India, we usually see cooperatives mostly in agriculture and dairy sector like Amul, but in the TVES China, we see them in almost every sector like textile, electronics, manufacturing, services. In fact, a big test of TVE is Hawaii Technologies. This company started as a TVE in the field of Shenzhen, but today it has become a global leader in the communication equipment. Another good example of this is the Chinese city of Wenzhou, where some local people established their own small shoe manufacturing factories. Gradually, it expanded and became so big that today Wenzhou's shoes industry is a big export sector in China. The shoes made here are sold not only in China but also outside China. By the year 1990s, TVE was employing about 100 million people even in China. People's living standard started increasing. Usually, an income gap is often seen in rural and urban areas, but here this gap has reduced thanks to TVES. About 20% of China's total TVES output was coming from in 1990. Crores of jobs were generated because of this, but this could happen only when peoples were already educated and skilled to do all this. In the year 1980, Deng also established special economic zones inside India in which tax incentives were given. Bureaucratic process was made easier and regulations were reduced so that foreign investment could come inside the country. When many people tell the story of China's development, they mention this point first. But I am not mentioning this point later because to reach this point, China had to do many more things to make it possible so that this foreign investment could be successful. When foreign companies invest money in the country, they will need skilled people. If people are not educated and skilled, then do not invest any money. Here, labor were cheap, people were skilled, bureaucracy was less, and because of TVES, people already had experience of these things. Shenzhen became the first special economic zone in China. The city was a small fishing village and it became a major international metropolis. The GDP of Shenzhen in 1980 was $0.3 billion, but 2020 it reached $420 billion. An open dollar policy was made to encourage foreign companies to come to the country. China's economy was open to the rest of the world. This is called economic liberalization. This was done in the China in the year 1978 itself. Economic liberalization in India was seen later in 1991.
We are in a phase of restructuring our economy, that our country is unable to launch a second industrial revolution, a second agricultural revolution, that our country is unable to integrate itself into the world economy in a manner in which we can take advantage of the opportunities offered by the new global economy.
Due to this, many multinational companies like Nike, Apple Phones, Volkswagen set up their manufacturing facilities in China. In China's FDI in 1980 was $0.06 billion. In 2021, it crossed $333 billion. Apart from all this, the government also focused a lot on infrastructure development. Railway lines should be laid, public transport should be made in cities, and at the same time, the government made scientific research a priority. Ping introduced a crash training program for more than 80 lakhs Chinese researchers. Priorities area were made energy, production, computers, optical, space technology, physics and genetics. The government is started giving huge funding to these science research centers. The money spent by the government in research and development kept increasing gradually, and in the year 2020 it crossed $500 billion. A big example of this is the Zhenghua Science Park built in Beijing in 1990, which is a hub of technology and innovation. You will find many high-tech companies, research institutions and universities here. Friends, in the year 1990, India and China were almost equal on the line. In fact, if you look at GDP per capita, India's was slightly higher than China's, $1,202 versus $983 of China. But their change was so amazing that today's China's GDP per capita is 3 times more than India's. According to the number of 2020, India is $6,454 and China is $17,312. Regarding all these revolutionary policies, Deng Xiaoping said that this thinking was crossing the river by feeling the stone's approach. When we cross the river, we look at each stone and every decision taken was taken after careful consideration. It is not that some detector one day come up with new idea that it should be done to change the entire country, and without thinking, without even consulting an advisor, he implemented his decision as per his wish. From Deng Xiaoping, we learn how bringing reforms is a gradual process, which would be done very thoughtfully. Testing should be done at every step and policies should be adjusted as needed. Now, it is not like that, my friends. Deng Xiaoping was absolutely a hero in our story and he did not do anything wrong. Economically, his thinking definitely favored independence, but politically he was still a dictator. During his tenure, a Tiananmen Square massacre was witnessed in 1989. One thing that was ignored in all these policies was the environment. What effect was it having on ecology, and the authoritarianism that continued during Deng Xiaoping's time? We can see the same result in Xi Jinping's rules today. If Deng Xiaoping wanted, he could have transitioned China to democracy, but he did not do so. Because of this, today's a teacher has emerged who once again acts as per his wish and takes decisions without thinking. This is the reason why severe lockdowns were seen in China during the pandemic in 2020. Restrictions are being imposed again on people's freedom. Thank you very much.